Constitution Party's candidate for president in 2004. His campaign theme was God, Family, Republic. He's the founder of the Institute on the Constitution, a nationwide educational program for teaching the principles incorporated in the Declaration of Independence and the original United States Constitution. For over 2 decades, he's been a partner with his brother Stephen in the Pasadena, Maryland law firm of Peroutka and Peroutka. Many years ago, Mr. Peroutka worked for the federal government, and he resigned his post when he discovered that everything he was involved in was categorically unconstitutional. And he has informed me that recently he was the recipient of a great honor, being listed as a hater by the Southern Poverty Law Center publication Hate Watch. It couldn't happen to a nicer guy. And at the same time, Pastor David Whitney, the senior instructor at the Institute on the Constitution, was also named a hater, partly because he's the chaplain of the Maryland League of the South. They both consider it a great honor. And he reminded me of a quote from the Gospel of John: "If the world hates you, you know that it hated me before it hated you." Chapter 15, verse 18. Please join me. His remarks today are entitled, "Dangerous Make-Believe." A big Alabama welcome for Michael Peroutka.
I'm still a little mad they tricked me into following the Reagan family here. And that's very, very difficult. God bless you. It is wonderful to be in Alabama. It's wonderful to be here. I'm going to ask these gentlemen to pass out a blue sheet to you, please. Gentlemen, if you'll do that now, Daniel and Cody. Please hand out the blue sheet. Now, I'm going to do a song that I don't expect you to know because God just gave it to me a couple of months ago. But you'll be kind enough to stop by our table and take home this, which is my gift to you. It's called Music of the American View, and maybe you'll know it by the time you drive home, okay? Interestingly, I overheard Sarah Hill. I want to thank Dr. J. Michael Hill and Sarah for inviting me here, and Mr. Warden and all of you for the great hospitality you've shown. But I overheard Sarah say, listen, you know, Michael Peroutka really isn't that good a singer, and he really doesn't play that well. He's really not the best entertainer in this county. And Michael Hill said, "Don't worry, honey, he is the best one in his price range." I want to ask you to follow along. Turn to the part that says, "Why do the nations rage?" This is from Psalm 2. On the blue sheet. The blue sheet is coming. This is called Vamp Till Ready. Look on the music, it says Vamp Till Ready. Why do the nations rage? The nations rage. Why do the nations rage? The nations rage. Why do the people plot such a vain thing? Why do they plot against the Lord? Don't they know He reigns, He rules? Don't they know He reigns and He rules? And His word is creation and His will is the law. Why would we do such foolish things? The heart of man has been darkened by the fall. Greed and desire have become his all in all. The Lord will laugh. The sons of men are fools, they'll know His wrath when they strive against His rule, against His rule. Why do the nations rage? The nations rage. Why do the nations rage? The nations rage. Why do the people plot such a vain thing? Why will is the law. Why would we do such foolish things? Be wise, you judges, be wise, you kings. Now fear the Lord, for his is everything. The rod of iron will break those who defy a blessed crown. Awaits those who comply, those who don't comply. Now, why do the nations rage? The nations rage. Why do the nations rage? The nations rage. Why do the people want such a vain thing? Why do they plot against the Lord? See if you can finish it. Don't they know he reigns, he rules? Don't they know he reigns, he rules? And his word is creation, and his will is the law. Why would we do such foolish things? Did you ever play make-believe? Maybe when you were a child, you played make-believe. You were a prince or a princess, or maybe you played in a play somewhere or a musical, and you took a character role and you played make-believe. I was at a minor league baseball game in my town, near Annapolis in Bowie, Maryland, a little while ago, and there was a superhero night, and everybody was dressed as a superhero, all the staff and half the people in the stands. And they were all playing make-believe. They were a superhero. And by the way, there's a whole lot more superheroes than when I was a kid now. They've proliferated. There's many more of them. But although make-believe can be an innocent thing, I wonder if I could get you to agree with me that make-believe as a substitute, as a total substitute for reality, can be a very, very dangerous thing to play. Suppose we're walking along in the woods and we come across a poisonous snake, and I say to Thomas there, just pick it up and make believe it's a puppy dog. And hold it to your chin and maybe pet it, and, you know, I think it would be a very dangerous thing. Suppose you told your daughter, go out here on Route 231 and just make believe the cars are toys as they're speeding by. Just make believe they're toys. It would be a very dangerous thing to do. Suppose one of those people at the ball game made believe they were a superhero and decided to jump off the upper deck and fly out of the park. That would be a very dangerous thing to do. So while you're probably thinking of other dangerous make-believe, let me change the subject for a second and go back to the song in Psalm 2 and ask you, why is there a determined effort by civil government and the media to misrepresent the true meaning of separation of church and state? Why, for that matter, did Americans murder 50 million of their own babies in the last 40 years? Why is there a desperate, determined effort on the part of civil leaders and media to publicize and validate homosexuality in our culture? Why? Why do American soldiers fight in wars that are undeclared by Congress against people that never attacked our country? Why do the nations rage? Why do we have women serving in combat? Why does the federal government consistently violate the Constitution by aggrandizing to itself powers and authorities that are not granted to it by we the people? Why does the government fear and suspect those who call on them to follow the Constitution and label them as terrorists? Again, in the words of the psalmist, why do the nations rage? Almost every day we hear about some court or other handing down decisions in cases and controversies that are manifestly absurd. Why does this keep happening? Why are the children of Christian parents abandoning and renouncing their faith as they pass through the public school system and, regrettably, the private school system? Why is there a 40-year war on poverty that has never conquered poverty? Why is there a 40-year war on drugs that has never conquered drugs? Why do the nations rage? I could go on, but I think the answer is actually found in the psalm where the question is raised. If you'll turn to Psalm 2, I'm sure you all have your Bibles with you, right? You don't have to. Let me read it to you. Why do the nations rage and the people plot a vain thing? The kings of the earth set themselves, and the rulers take counsel together. So the leaders of the earth, the rulers of the earth, take counsel together against the Lord and his anointed, saying, let's break their bonds. Let's break their bonds in pieces and cast away their cords from us. the psalmist says. In other words, let's make believe that God's law isn't law. Let's make believe that God isn't God. Matter of fact, let's make believe that we're God. Let's make believe that we can make up the rules. Matter of fact, let me pause here. A couple of Thursdays ago, wasn't the whole country, maybe yourself accepted, but wasn't the whole culture bowing before the supreme altar of the Supreme Court and waiting for the oracle to speak? In other words, waiting for God to say what the law was? Wasn't that what was happening? The psalmist says, "He who sits in the heavens shall laugh. The Lord shall hold them in derision." Notice, this isn't a little pat them on the head, aren't they cute laugh. "Then he shall speak to them in his wrath and distress them in his deep displeasure. Yes, I have set my king on my holy hill of Zion. I will declare the decree. The Lord has said to me, you are my son. Today I have begotten you. Ask of me, and I will give you the nations for your inheritance, and the ends of the earth for your possession." In other words, the earth, it belongs to him. He is the Lord. Then it says, "You shall break them with a rod of iron." This is what happens to people who play dangerous make-believe. "You shall dash them with a rod of iron. You shall dash them to pieces like a potter's vessel. Now therefore," the psalmist says, "be wise, O kings, be instructed, you judges of the earth. Serve the Lord with fear and rejoice with trembling. Kiss the Son, lest he be angry and you perish in the way when his wrath is kindled but a little. Blessed are those who put their trust in him." In other words, playing make-believe is a very dangerous thing, and we're told by the psalmist that that's what's going to happen. But yet, isn't that what we're doing in our culture? Isn't that what our leaders are doing, playing make-believe? I'm going to ask you, can I ask you to hand out these yellow sheets? I was going to ask the young men to do it, and I forgot to. Would you pass those out, please? I'm going to just give you an example of a talk that we gave at Institute on the Constitution. And I'm not actually going to give you the whole talk, because I'm going to give you the talk to take home with you, as a matter of fact. When you pick up the music that I mentioned earlier from our table, please pick up this as well. It's my gift to you. It's our gift to you. It's called Dangerous Make-Believe. And I'm actually basically giving you the first part of this talk, and I'm going to kind of summarize the end for you, because I have some other things to talk to you about. Hopefully I'll leave some time to answer some questions or have a little discussion if you would like. I made the case that we're playing a dangerous make-believe, but it wasn't always so in our culture. I'm going to ask you to look at the side of the yellow sheet that says dangerous make-believe, where it says presuppositions of American polity. We live in a very pagan world, and our earlier speakers talked about the stupidity of the things that we are doing. But it really wasn't always so with the documents of our founding. There is an American view of law and liberty in government, which is a biblical view. And it's based on a biblical view. The Declaration of Independence is a document of complaint, basically. About 4/5 of the document is a list of grievances that our founders had against the king. 28 grievances by my count. And by the way, it's surprising how many, if you look at those grievances that they had against the king, how many of those grievances we have today. He wasn't protecting the borders. He was misusing the jury system, misusing the court system. He was misusing the army. We would have a lot of those same, very, very similar complaints today. But if I could turn your direction to where it says presuppositions of American polity, what our founders did before they made that list of complaints against the king, they did something much more important, I believe, than just listing complaints. Because think about it for just a second. If you have 28 complaints against the king, but the king is the lawgiver, what comes out of his mouth is the law, then you could have 28 complaints, you could have 128 complaints, you could have 8,028 complaints. What would be the difference? If he is the lawgiver and the lawmaker, aren't you just grasping at wind with all your complaints? So in the document, they made the case, before they listed their complaints, that he isn't the lawgiver and the lawmaker. They made the case that there is a higher moral law, a higher lawgiver than the king. This, I think, is precisely what's been forgotten by those in America today who bow before the Supreme Court and think that its judgments are the law. and look to the Supreme Court and look to government to replace God that takes care of you from womb to tomb, as Mike Tuggle talked about earlier. So the presuppositions of American law and government are really what we teach in Institute on the Constitution, because we need to reinvigorate the culture with this understanding and return to it. Whether that takes the place of reform, which Dr. Hill has said is very unlikely or impossible, but whether it does or not, even if you secede, then what are you going to do? You need to secede, and then you need to have the biblical understanding of law and government and make the applications. So we still need to take the biblical view of law and government into account, no matter what the outcome is with respect to the crumbling of the current regime. Our founders said we hold these truths to be self-evident. Now, what do you have to presuppose before you could even make that statement? If you're going to say we hold these truths to be self-evident, what are you presupposing already? That there's such a thing as truth. That there's such a thing as absolute truth. And yet, many in our culture don't believe it. Hasn't that been dumbed out of us to some extent? We think that all truth is relative. There's no such thing as absolute truth. I was at a cocktail party once for a fundraiser for a school, and I was talking to one of the board members, and he was making the case that truth is relative. There's a truth for you, and a truth for her, and a truth for me. And I said, "Are you absolutely sure that's true?" So you see how the argument turns on itself. If there's no such thing as absolute truth, and there's no way to verify, or there's no use having a discussion about anything. As a matter of fact, a discussion about anything or an argument about anything is impossible. So they said that all men are created equal. Now, what do you have to presuppose to make the statement that all men are created equal? You have to presuppose there's a creator God, right? That they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, and to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men. Now, you ask most people who walk up the driveway or call you on the phone and ask for your vote, or send you a piece of mail and asking for your vote or for your support for office, and this is a great question to ask them. I have done this in my driveway. A gentleman came up to me wanting me to vote for him for the House of Delegates in Maryland. That's what we call our representatives. And I said, "What's the purpose of government? What's the purpose of government?" It's a simple question. Matter of fact, it's such a simple question it can be a stumper. Because people today you'll hear most people give some kind of socialist answer, some answer with some socialist sentiment. They'll say the purpose of government is to take care of the people who can't take care of themselves, or they'll give you some welfare answer, or what will really infuriate you is they'll say the purpose of government is to take care of the children of the state. And a state doesn't have any children, of course. State's never even been pregnant. But God gives children to moms and dads, and that He gives them the authority to raise them up in the fear and admonition of the Lord. So you just go back to, what did Jefferson say? What did our founders say? What's the presupposition of American polity? What's the purpose of government? They said that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men. Well, to secure what rights? Oh, those God-given rights we talked about in the first two sentences. So just boiled down to its essence, the American view of law and government, which I'm going to say to you is the biblical view of law and government, is that there is a God. Our rights come from Him. That is to say, all law comes from Him. He's the author of law. And the purpose of government is to protect and defend those God-given rights. It's not to make sure your seatbelt is buckled. It's not to make sure you're wearing your helmet. It's not to redistribute your wealth. It's not to take, because He's got it and you need it, to take it from Him and to give it to you. Of course, in order to take it from Him and to give it to you, I really need to own it all, don't I? Don't I? I mean, I need to be the owner of it all, because I need to have the right to move it around all over the place. So, it is foolish, it seems to me. I was talking with some gentlemen about maybe investigating how to get people to run for office. It's foolish, it seems to me, to vote for anybody who doesn't have this view. Anybody. And I don't care how bad the other guy is. It doesn't make any sense to vote for the lesser of two evils. When I had the privilege of running, when I had the privilege of running for president back in 2004, represented the Constitution Party, I was asked very many times by commentators, by talking heads, interviewers, Well, the one thing that he asked was, why are you doing this when you don't have a chance? But let me leave that off to the side for a second. They would ask, they would say, shouldn't I be voting for the lesser of the two evils? Well, if you know that, in my case back in 2004, Mr. Bush and Mr. Kerry, if you know Mr. Bush and Mr. Kerry both have promised you that they're going to break their oath of office before they even take it, if they've already told you, then what advantage have you gained by voting for the lesser of two evils? What you've done is voted for evil. And when you get evil, you deserve it, don't you? Because that's precisely what you voted for. So it doesn't make it, and I was listening to one of these televangelists the other day say that it's as an American, as a Christian, you must vote. Please let me disabuse you of that, at least from my opinion. I don't think you must vote for evil. That seems to me to be absurd. When your choices are so limited, and I don't have to tell this crowd your choices are purposefully limited. You didn't need me to come from Maryland to tell you that all these decisions that you think you make are already filtered, so it's just the illusion of a decision, illusion of a choice. You don't really have a choice. And then to have a Christian leader, as I was listening to, make the point that, well, if you don't vote, God wants you to vote. God considers it a sin if you don't vote. No. I think that's absurd. So I just throw that in as my opinion. But I want to ask you to turn the page over now and look at the struggle of worldviews here. Because I described to you that the American view is that there is a God, our rights come from Him, and the purpose of civil government is to protect those God-given rights. That's the American view, that's the biblical view, but I didn't say it's the only view. There are other views of law and government, and I have kind of categorized them all as the pagan socialist view, and just because they're not the biblical view, so I call them all pagan. You can call it socialist or Marxist. But under the biblical view, the state is divinely ordained. That is to say, in Luke chapter 20, when they came to try to fool Christ or ask him a trick question, they said, should we pay taxes to Caesar or not? And he didn't actually answer that question directly. I think he used the question to establish a broader principle. He said, show me the coin whose image is it? Then he said, render to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, which out of the mouth of our Savior, he gave Caesar a legitimate authority. Caesar does. There is such a thing as civil government. It should exist. We need it to exist. It does have a jurisdiction and a function. But then he said, but to God the things that are God's, indicating that the Caesar's jurisdiction is limited. He's not in charge of everything. He's only in charge of some things. And by the way, he doesn't do those very well. Basically, his two jurisdictions are to administer the justice system according to God's standard and to protect the borders. So do you feel like either of those two things are getting done well in America? But so his authority is limited. But in the pagan view, we look at we consider the state not just to be divinely ordained, but to be divine. And Mike Tuggles was talking about that today. We're looking to the state from womb to tomb, cradle to grave. It's going to take care of all your finances. Now it's going to take care of all your health care. You don't need to worry about your own pension. You don't have to worry about anything. State's going to take care of all those things. So that's a pagan, ungodly, socialist, Marxist view. Just skipping down. This is based on the American view. The biblical view is based on the idea that we're created beings. It's right there in the first presupposition of American polity that we talked about. And the pagan view is based on the idea that your great-great-granddaddy was a hunk of primordial ooze in a pond somewhere, and your granddaddy was some eely thing that slithered up on a bank and grew some legs, and then your daddy was a monkey. And then what are you? Then we try to teach you self-esteem. Right? Anyway, I left a blank on that page, and what I usually tell people is underneath that the biblical view over there, what you want to write is real. Again, this is a real view. This is reality. Under the pagan view, this is make-believe. The pagan view, the anti-biblical view of law and government, like the anti-biblical view of anything, is born out of man's mind. It's a fiction. It's make-believe. So what are we about at the Institute of the Constitution? We are about trying to reinvigorate the American culture with the truth and move away from this dangerous, destructive, deadly make-believe. Our mission is to try to instill a biblical view against which we can hold up the issues of the day, the actions of civil leaders, the actions of or the commentary that's talked about about our civil leaders, and hold it up against this grid of a worldview and what God says about civil government. So we talk about jurisdictions, the jurisdiction of the church, the jurisdiction of the state, the jurisdiction of the self. And we have materials that deal with that. We have a basic Constitution course. Now, again, I don't disagree with Dr. Hill at all that this regime is beyond reform. I think that's an obvious fact, and I agree with him. However, I do agree that when you secede, or however the destruction and the rubble of this regime takes place and how it plays out, you're going to need to take a biblical worldview and apply it to civil law and government. That's what you're still going to need to do. Whether we're going to have this foundational information in the hearts and minds of the people, or else liberty won't survive the secession either. You see what I'm saying? So this view, I'm saying that because I don't want people from League of the South to, for 1 minute, think that I'm about reforming the current regime, and studying the Constitution is about informing the regime. I, like many of you, and like Patrick Henry, probably have come to the conclusion that we smelled the rat from the beginning. Okay. However, we believe that it is essential to take a biblical view of law and government, and then make those applications. So we published actually 3 courses of instruction, and I'm in my commercial mode now. Okay. This is the commercial. I'm finished with the speech. You want the rest of the speech? Please get it. And by the way, this is Karen and Joseph Delamater. Then they've come. Please welcome them. They've come with me from Maryland. We drove down here for 2 days reading the Gray Book, by the way. Karen was reading it from the back seat out loud. So we were studying up. Anyway, Karen and Joseph are brother and sister. They have the same last name, but they don't. I always say they don't fight like husband and wife. They fight like brother and sister. Okay, but they're here to help you and tell you about our materials. And I'm briefly going to give you a commercial now about what we do. And I'll answer any questions that you might have. We publish a course on the U.S. Constitution. We feel like it would be a great builder for you in your workshops, when Dr. Hill said, somebody called and said nothing's going on. Well, this could be going on. This is something you could do. You could be discussing with your neighbors a true American view of law and government, and then discussing how that could be applied. And you could be reading the Gray Book too, as well, which is also a great vision for what a civil government should look like in America. But this is a 12-week course of study, and it's 12 lectures. We do it over 12 weeks. You can do it faster or slower, but it is, I believe, a great party building or organization building tool, because it creates the commonality of understanding on which we're going to march forward. That is to say, there is an American view of law and government, and a biblical view that we need to understand. So that's what our U.S. course is about. We actually conducted 3 ways. We conducted live and in person in Pasadena, Maryland. Pastor David Whitney, myself, and some other instructors give this class. It's conducted around the country by people who take this kit itself and do it. This is like a turnkey operation here. You can take this and use the student manual. There's a teacher's manual. It's like a homeschool course on the U.S. Constitution and American history. We rehearse what an American view of law and government looks like I've just been doing. We talk about the religious beliefs of the founders. We talk about the biblical beliefs of the founders and the political philosophy of the founders. And then we talk basically about the Constitution and the words of the Constitution itself. In other words, thou shalt know the rules. And then we talk about how courts have degraded and moved away and subverted the Constitution. And we talk about ways that we can move back to this biblical understanding. We also publish a course on the Maryland Constitution that's been very helpful in our state in refocusing people. I'll just tell you just a tidbit about the Maryland Constitution. In Article 23 of our Declaration of Rights, for example, there's a very simple statement. Article 23 is very short, and it says that in criminal cases, the jury will be the judge of the law and the facts in all criminal cases. Couldn't be clearer. Couldn't be clearer. Now, in my state, in Maryland, gradually over a period of time, courts began to chip away at that. And it's extremely interesting to read how they did it, because it's absolute make-believe. It's absolutely nonsense. And I'm going to tell you this story in a second, but what basically the Supreme Court, when this was taken before the Supreme Court, said was, I'm paraphrasing, but I'm trying to quote from, I think it's Brady versus Maryland. And it says in that case that the Maryland Constitution, Article 23, doesn't mean what it appears to say. That's what the Supreme Court of the United States actually said. We have I was going to tell you the story. I was riding in the car recently, within the last couple of months, and I had two buddies, both attorneys, both doing a lot of work before juries, sitting in one in the front seat, one in the back seat while I was driving. And I told them what I just told you. Neither of them knew that Article 23 of the Maryland Constitution said what I just told you. Neither of them. The guy in the front seat said, well, that changes everything. That's amazing. I mean, he was stunned that the jury, because they don't even, in Maryland courts, the judge says, the jury will determine the facts, and I'll tell you what the law is, right? But that's not what our Constitution says. And then the attorney who's sitting in the back seat said, well, that was true. That used to be true, but the Court of Appeals, meaning our Supreme Court in Maryland, has said that that's not valid anymore. I said, Tommy, think about what you just said. This guy's name is Tommy. I said, Tommy, think about what you just said. What you just said is that the court just said the Constitution isn't what the Constitution says. If you have a court that says what that overrules the Constitution, then you don't have a Constitution. Don't you see that? But yet that's the same. I mean, I'm saying that incredulously, but and I know that that's the talking head, and that's what Americans think about the Supreme Court of the United States. That's absurd. It's patently absurd. Now, here's a point that I want to make with you before I lose you. This is a ruler. It's 12. It's a foot. Okay. I'm going to use it as an example of a fixed standard. If Thomas and I are going to build a house, and I say, bring me over a whole pallet of 8-foot 2x4s, and he brings over these ones, and he says, here they are. But they're like, he's got a different standard than I do. They're about 5.5 feet long, not 8 feet long. We're never going to get this house built, right? Because we need to have a fixed standard. Okay. Now, there's two fixed standards you need to remember for law and government. The first is this one, right? The Bible is a fixed standard. Here's the picture I want you to go home with. The ruler's in the Bible. Okay. This is the first standard that anybody who runs for office has to understand. The very first thing that anything that they do in law and government has to do is be in harmony with God's Word. That's number one. Okay. Now, if we're talking about the United States of America, or my state of Maryland, this is a pocket constitution of the United States of America. This is the standard. This is the secondary. This is what we have said as a people, that the government has the authority to do. Doesn't have the authority. So these are the two standards, right? If you have anybody running for office that doesn't understand those two things, run, do not walk to the nearest exit. You don't want to have anything to do with those people. Now, you and I both know that most people running for office don't have any idea of that. So you say, well, do I vote for the lesser two evils? Please don't do that. Please remember that you'll be voting for evil when you do that. You might want to even look in the mirror and decide that it's time for you to run yourself. And I encourage you to do that. And if you, by the way, if you have a pastor who doesn't understand the two things that I just said to you, if you have a pastor, then find you a pastor that understands them. Please do. Please find yourself a pastor that understands that that the Bible is the ultimate law book. When John Roberts was during his what do you call it when he's vetted for his hearings before the Congress, before he was selected as a confirmation. Thank you. His confirmation hearings. But during his confirmation hearings, he volunteered the information. He wasn't even asked this question directly, but he said the Bible will not be involved in any of my judgments. I won't base any of my decisions on the Bible. What he just said was he won't pay any attention to law. That's what he just promised you. So that's what you're dealing with. Now, here's a point I'd like to make, and now that I've made that point. I don't think you can subjugate a Christian people. I don't think you can enslave a Christian people. The ladies who did the wonderful music made a reference to that. The young gentleman who spoke up here earlier made reference to that. The other two speakers made reference to the fact that we're Christian, and if you remove the Christianity, you remove the essential. So, okay. So I don't think you can enslave a Christian people, because a Christian people won't stand for it. A Christian culture will recognize and reject tyranny before tyranny can even get a foothold. Why? Well, this is because the biblically literate and devoted people will not allow the usurpations of self-government, family government, church government that are necessary for tyranny to prevail in civil government. A Christian people will, by virtue of their understanding of God's creation, their knowledge of history, their comprehension of the divine origin of law, and their assurance of their own heavenly citizenship, will never suffer earthly leaders who do not speak and act lawfully. A Christian people would never be so foolish as to allow those who mock law and justice to lead them. Therefore, in order to subjugate and enslave a Christian people, you must first, of course, de-Christianize them. You must remove from the culture that which prevents you from conquering it. Piece by piece, you must remove Christian beliefs and the memory of those beliefs from the minds of the people. Now this will take some time. You must concentrate on the children. You got to take them away from the parents, and every day, day by day, indoctrinate them to reject and forget the Christian ideas and habits of their fathers and mothers and grandfathers and grandmothers. And this is what government schools were specifically designed to do. And I ask you not to take my word for it. Please don't believe that because Michael Peroutka said it. Please look at the works of Robert Owen and Robert Dale Owen and Horace Mann and see what they said. See what they said they were doing and trying to do. See, because once the people are de-Christianized, you can take away their rights. You can take away their property. You can take away their weapons. You can tell them lies that they will believe, and you can kill them or let them live if that's what you want to do. You can't conquer a Christian people, but if you could steal their children and train them to believe that there is a separation, a wall of separation between God and government, then you can conquer them, or rather, they will have conquered themselves, right? If you go back to the yellow sheet that I gave you, and you look at the bottom, it says SOCAS versus SOGAG. You see where I wrote that? That's supposed to be separation of church and state. See, because there really is a separation of church and state in the biblical view. There really is a separation of church and state. You don't want Hillary Clinton administering your sacraments, do you? Do you? No. There's a different function of civil government. So the great lie of separation of church and state is that there's an element of truth in it. There is a separation of church and state. There's a separation of jurisdictions. But there's no separation of God and government. That's what it means on the other side. The pagan view would like you to think there's a separation of God and government. But there isn't. So we look in Institute on the Constitution to infuse these ideas back into the culture by means of these courses we teach. The third course I didn't tell you about is the duty of the jury. We teach a course on what a jury is supposed to what it's supposed to do, which is to defend the Constitution. We're hoping to infuse, piece by piece, bit by bit, an American understanding, a biblical understanding of law and government, so that we won't be fooled. And so that we can, when we secede, or when this crumbles and we secede, however that plays itself out, that we will be able to build on those foundations, because otherwise we will have accomplished nothing by the blood, sweat, and tears of a secession. We will be in the same position as we were unless we understand what a biblical view is, that is to say, what a real view is, and build upon that and know what the principles are. On our table, there are a number of, in addition to our courses, I must say, we produce materials which make application to certain issues, which take this biblical view of law and government and make an application to a certain issue. For example, in no particular order, I have in my hand Pastor David Whitney explaining what he calls the federal land grab. You know, there's no such thing as a national forest. You know that, right? And he explains how that came about in the principled nature of how we should understand that. He explains, this is also David Whitney, he explains why marriage is no business of the state and no marriage license is required. Okay, this is an application, this is an understanding of a biblical view of law and government as applied to a certain area. All right? Again, David Whitney, about why every Christian should study the Constitution. Okay? Here's one where I talked about, this is one of the first Fridays that I gave, where I talked about the different biblical jurisdictions, the state, first of all, the self, the family, the church, and the state, and explain those jurisdictions and how they're all jurisdictions that have to answer to God. We also have on the table a documentary of the campaign back in 2004, so you understand some of the arguments we tried to make. And by the way, I should pause and thank the League of the South for supporting me during that campaign, because I know y'all don't like to get involved in Yankee campaigns. I wasn't a Yankee, so I appreciate you supporting me in that campaign. I'm very, very grateful. And by the way, that got me, that was the beginning of getting me on a hate list. So to paraphrase Patrick Henry, if this be hate, let's make the most of it, right? Here's one that's on the subject of interposition. This is the duty of the lesser magistrate to step in and protect us from the tyrant. Okay? Here's one that Pastor Joe Moorcraft came and did for us about God and government, God and politics. An excellent presentation he did. Here's one by a guy named Ronnie Kennedy. James Ron Kennedy. He came and did a great presentation for us last year, or I guess it was the year before, on creating moral communities in an immoral society. So these are the kinds of things. I won't tell you all of them because I don't want to extend the commercial any further, but please know that we are taking this biblical worldview and trying to make certain applications in certain subject areas for your edification. Please, and Karen's over there knocking down prices, making these the best deal she possibly can for you. But please, but I will tell you that if you have a need for or use for one of these and you can't afford it, please take it. These things, we've done these things so that we can help you to enlighten others of what a biblical worldview looks like in law and government and politics, and how it would play itself out. We've been doing this for about a dozen years now. I always make the joke, I say we lose $5 on each thing we produce, but we're going to make it up in volume. Let me tell you real fast about the sheriff in the Constitution. This is very recent. Sheriff Jeff Christopher is from the the jurisdiction of Sussex County, Delaware. And he is a hero. What they're trying to do to sheriffs all across the country is to denude them, defund them, and take away their arrest powers, and make them just paper pushers, and eventually get rid of the office of sheriff. And if you have any kind of concept of what the global agenda is and the New World Order agenda is, you will understand why this is occurring. This is occurring because the sheriff is an elected official. He is a law enforcement official. He's the last line of defense against the tyrant. He's our local protector. So particularly in Sussex County, Delaware. Delaware's only got 3 counties, and the lower one, the southernmost, is Sussex County. Jeff Christopher is the sheriff there, and the legislature and a number of other forces actually under the led by a gentleman named Beau Biden. No. He's the Attorney General in Delaware, and you know who his daddy is. They are working to take away the sheriff's authority. Like I say, I believe the agenda is because it'll just make the tyrant's job easier if in fact there's no local hero to defend people. The sheriff. So we had we did a presentation with Sheriff Jeff Christopher, and also Sheriff Richard Mack came and gave a talk. So Sheriff Mack is on this tape as well, and myself giving just a word picture kind of example of what interposition is supposed to look like. So these are all things that are designed to try to make the case for a biblical worldview with respect to these different issues that are going on. I'll tell you also that if you tune in on Tuesday evenings, if you go to the Steve Deace website, Steve is a talk show host out of Des Moines, Iowa, but he's in about 30 markets. And every Tuesday evening I do a Constitution Weekly with him. In Eastern time it's on at 9 o'clock, so I guess from 9 to 10. So here I guess it would be on from 8 to 10, 8 to 9. 8 to 9 on Tuesday evenings. We're in Central Time Zone, right? 8 to 9. If you type in Steve Deace, D-E-A-C-E, that's how you spell Deace, you'll be able to hear us talk about these issues across the country and try to make the case for a biblical worldview being reinvigorated into the American culture with respect to law and government. We have a solution. God gives us a solution if you turn to the dangerous make-believe side of the page. He gives us a solution in 2 Chronicles 7:14. He says, if my people, his people, who are called by my name, will humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven and will forgive their sin and will heal their land. So it begins with us individually, it begins with personal morality, and it begins with the church. If we want our land healed, here's the formula and the prescription that God gave us to do that. I'm going to ask you to turn back to the blue sheet, because I want to do for you, and I don't think you're going to know this one either. Have a minute left. This is great. Everybody's got it but me. This is going to be on our website soon, and I wrote this trying to be an educational song about what the American view is, and it kind of, in my view, turned out to be more like Schoolhouse Rock, like a kid's song. But I'll ask you to bear with me. And again, it's on the CD. But this is what we're working on. When our fathers pledged allegiance, it was not to a flag they saw. They declared our independence by bold reference to God's law. The American view was not so new back in 1773. It has roots that run back to Genesis 1 and all through history. So give me your ear if you